let's get started. Again, good morning, good day. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Race Talk Revolution episode, Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene. This is a place where your voice matters. Today, our topic is from racialization to solidarity, moving beyond the illusion of separateness. And our speaker today is Maria Reinat-Pumarejo, a longtime educator, organizer, and activist for racial and social justice. Lane will talk more about her in just a moment. As always, during our conversation today, we ask that you please remain muted. Now, when we get to the Q&A section, we will instruct you on how to raise your hands. Now, because these conversations are so rich and our speakers are so knowledgeable about what they bring, we want to encourage everyone to limit your use of the chat to direct your questions for our speakers. So we want you to please use the opportunity available during the Q&A to activate your camera and then to express your questions and comments at that time. Now, we also want to remind you that Race Talk Revolution is a loving, inclusive platform designed to strip away the false beliefs that keep us separate as species, to uncover the not so hidden truth that we all want the same things in life, and then to heal the wounds created by systemic racism. Race Talk Revolution is a safe and brave space for people of all backgrounds to share ideas and opinions and to explore the nuances of systemic racism, while together growing our capacity for effective anti-racist activism. The Race Talk Revolution community is committed. We are committed to practicing radically inclusive love. What does this mean? That means that even when we do not understand or agree with what's being shared or what's being said, we are committed to listening with respect, appreciation, and empathy. You see, it is our commitment that every person be encouraged, heard, and appreciated, because here on Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene, every voice matters. And here's the Reverend Lane Cobb.
Hello, everyone. Good day. Welcome to Race Talk with Lane and Eugene. So happy to have this woman with us here today. And I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing her. Ms. Maria Reinat-Pumarejo is founder and director of Colectivo, Organizers for Consciousness in Action, an organization committed to anti-oppression organizing in Puerto Rico and the United States. Along with Raúl Quiñones-Rosado, she co-founded and co-directed the Institute for Latino Empowerment and established the Undoing Racism Organizing Committee in Western Massachusetts. Maria teaches race, ethnicity, and human rights at the Universidad del Sagrado Corazón graduate program in justice systems. She is a core trainer with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, an international anti-racist organization based in New Orleans, widely known for their Undoing Racism community organizing workshop. An anti-racist educator, organizer, and a women's advocate, she works closely with women's organizations in Puerto Rico and internationally to support and join the leadership of other women of color. She is a member of the International Women Against Militarism Network and has represented Puerto Rico at gatherings throughout the world. Maria was one of the 1,000 Women for Peace, nominated for the 2005 Nobel Peace Prize, and awarded the City of Guernica 2006 Award for Peace and Reconciliation. For her 2 decades of anti-racism leadership and solidarity work in Puerto Rico, she was awarded the Martin Luther King Jr. Roundtable 2016 Medal of Honor. Girlfriend, welcome to Race Talk. You're coming to us from Puerto Rico, so buenos dias. But we are so honored to have you, and I'm personally grateful that you accepted my invitation to come here. I knew you was a bad mamma jamma. I didn't know how bad you were, okay? I didn't know about all of that. So congratulations on those accolades. You've been at this for a really long time. You're welcome. Why don't you just tell us, about the work you do and what has motivated you to do this for all these years?
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here talking with you. I didn't imagine that we would have audience, so this is like makes it so good, you know, in the
Mm.
sense that I could see faces and I could see your expressions and feel you in the way that we as anti-racist people should feel each other. As you heard, my name is Maria Reinat-Pumarejo, and I have been engaged in undoing racism, dismantling racism for about 3 decades, since I started in the 80s. I came to the United States like any other immigrant. I came to look for the American dream, supposedly, you know, I was following the myth. And then when I arrived to what people have been selling me as Massachusetts, the most liberal state of the United States, you know, it was like, what? Through the eyes of my daughter, who was 8, you know, it was pretty much a nightmare. And, you know, have to become diligent and have to become aware. As a mother, I couldn't, you know, waste time. I have to be quick in understanding what my daughter was going through, but also what I was going through. The difference between she and I was that she was a kid. And I already have a degree from the University of Puerto Rico. I came as an adult to the United States. So I was a little bit more prepared and solid in my identity. So since then, I have been engaged in the anti-racist struggle. I was for almost 3 decades with the People's Institute. Now I'm running and continue to be part of the organization that I founded. It's a women's collective today. It evolved. And also do a training called Latino Challenges Toward Racial Justice. And what we are trying to do is to engage Latinos, because as you might imagine, and probably your experience is telling you, when Latinx people come to the United States, often you see that people are a bit disoriented with what they find, but also thinking that, you know, racism doesn't touch us, that this is an issue of white and Black people in the United States, but Latinos, if we, you know, maintain our head down and we work and, you know, we don't create any problems, that then we'll be okay. We can aspire to the so-called dream. And because of that, and wanting to make Latinx people understand racism and take the time to do it, it is that we designed this training, and we have been doing it often, and almost for the 30 years that I have been working on dismantling racism. So that's a little bit of our work. And one of the things that we understand with this work is that it's important, the content, as well as the methodology, the way that you do the work. You know, it's important that you understand that process of racialization that involves all of us. We all have been racialized. White people have been racialized. Latinx people are racialized. Black people are racialized. And we need to understand how the race construct position us, and often position us against each other.
Can you say something about that? Make sure people know what racialization is, Maria, too.
Yeah, it's when we get colorized, when we are given adscription to a group that in a race-based society, you know, it means that you have more or less value than other people. We are assigned positions in the race construct. For white people, you know, white people are at the top of the hierarchy. For Black people at the bottom of the hierarchy. In some places, indigenous people are at the bottom of the hierarchy. And for Latinx in general, you know, the position is someplace like in the middle. For Asian people, more or less like in the middle. And it is important that we recognize our position or the intended position in a race-based society. And that's what we have been working on, Lane and Eugene and others.
So what are the effects and the purpose of racialization?
Well, you know, the purpose of racialization is racism. It's about, you know, giving privileges, giving advantages to white people. The pain that it caused to people of color so much is incidental, you know. The important thing here is that you give advantages to white people, you position white people at the top in three basic aspects. You know, white people are more intelligent, white people are more, have the definition of aesthetic, and white people have and share the most evolved culture. And in all those three aspects, you know, white people are positioned as superior. For what? To obtain status, to have access, to be sanctioned by the state legally, to have that access. It's nothing that white people say, give me access. No, it's something that is already there for you. It's like an American Express card. You never leave home without it. And for people of color, unfortunately, you know, we had to feel it. We had to feel that we have been positioned in a subordinated and inferior position. And it's constantly struggling through these issues, you know, constantly struggling with not being assigned that subordinated status and fighting it. But at the end of the day, you know, it is a whole society constructed in this way, already designed, arranged in this fashion.
I heard what you said.
And so I see racialization as a continuation of colonization, right? Like setting people up for political power and economic power and so forth, right? When people vote against their own interests in this country, I think that's also racialization in action. You know, is that right? You know, we kind of buy into that whole construct without even understanding what we're doing often.
Right. And it has been so since the beginning. You have to convince people, you know, that they have more in common with the oligarchs, that they have more in common with wealthy people, that they have more in common, you know, with the people in position of power than anybody else. And that's a magnificent, perfect way of maintaining the race construct. It has been so since the beginning, you know, convincing. Race depends on racial narratives. And when you have racial narratives about the superiority of a group, and then you have racial narratives about the inferiority of others, you have to convince them that those narratives are truth. And for 500 years, we have been doing so in the Americas. It's about convincing people that, you know, they are in a certain position in the race construct, and we internalize it and then manifest, you know, inferiority or superiority. And so from the perspective of people of color, we too internalize the narratives of our own inferiority. Is sick, but that's how racism operates. You know, it makes us all sick. It makes us all, you know, accepting these narratives, these ideas about racism, and sometimes without questioning. And at some point, you kind of, something hits you, and then you discover, and then once you discover, it's like, you know, you start seeing and you cannot stop not seeing. And hopefully that's the process that we want to encourage people to go through and examine for themselves. I want to say hi to Jordan, who I know.
Welcome,
Hi.
Jordan.
Hi, Maria. Wonderful to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. So, Lane, the history is so important in this, you know, when you start seeing how this whole thing evolved with, you know, the edicts that the Pope gave around, you know, 1452 to these days in terms of giving permission to take the land of indigenous people, giving permission for slavery to happen, the kind of slavery that then, you know, you not only you are an enslaved person, but also your kids and so on perpetually. That has been with us since 1452. And we continue to recreate these ways with lethal results for people of color. For indigenous people, it has been about dispossessing and displacing and genocidal policies and practices. For African descent people, it has been about enslaving, you know, about giving permission to enslave people and do with that body whatever you want. For Asian people, at some point they weren't part of the process, but they were made into the process. And then for Latinx people, well, we came after 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo taking 55% of Mexico. Then we were it, you know, but before that we weren't it. I mean, we were not there in the imaginary. And for us, it's about sharing history. There is animosity between the different groups because the racial ideology. But we say that there is animosity, but seldom do we stop and say, okay, tell me your story. I don't want to know. I don't want to depend on the story that I have been told. Tell me your story. For that, you need time. You know, and you need curiosity. And it happens that racism takes away our curiosity about each other because we depend on racial narratives. You know how the educational system has been so distorted, so full of myth and lies. And so for people, it's like, there's no reason why we should tell each other our stories, you know? We don't have time for that. But we got to stop and tell each other our own racial narrative. So, because if we do, then we will understand what we have a lot of things in common, some differences, but a lot of things in common pain in Latin America. Usually, you know, people think United States is, you know, has developed the worst system. I don't deny that, but it is started in the Caribbean.
Right.
You know, some of the terms that you use in the United States come from Latin America. They were in existence before United States was United States. And also, you know, very often people say there's no Black people in Latin America. Well, you know, 93 to 95% of all African ancestors came to Latin America, not to the United States. So where are they? What's this idea that Latinx people are like West Side Story? We are like, you know, the summation of Black and white, and that's what we are. We don't have Black people, you know, they're invisibilized. That's the idea. You see people coming to the United States saying, well, I never experienced racism in my country, as if their country is innocent. But the fact is that racism was born in Latin America. And that story, that history is one that we have to kind of laser into. And that's the process of racialization. So for Latinx people to be awake, mira, maybe the reason why you didn't experience racism in Latin America is because you're very light. You don't have to. Where are Black people? What happened with them in Latin America? In many places, they are attempting to count Black people because they didn't even count them in the census. And so when you don't count them, they don't exist. So in coming to the United States, we bring our own racial construct. And then we start thinking, oh, people are going to be treating me in a certain way in the United States. And what happened is that immediately you're put in your place because there's Latinophobia in the United States. Mm. And when you're put in your place and people are not used to be put in their place, there's surprise, you know, and disorientation. And it is then that we want to deal with people. In the midst of that disorientation, we need to awaken to the reality of racism and not participate in what it is a lethal, you know, dynamic for all of us.
Yeah. Maria, thank you so much for being here and dropping all of this knowledge. One of the questions that I have in terms of racialization and, you know, because within that is the colorization, right?
Right.
Could you talk a little bit on how the colorization affects the Latinx community? I mean, even within that community, and it happens within the Black community as well.
Yes, yes. You know, people say things like, oh, it's different here. You know, we don't have the dichotomous, the polarized way of seeing racism that people in the United States, and that might be true. You know, there's a certain fluidity because we're all people of color. But even when you are people of color, you can create a race construct where the lightest of us, regardless if we are of African descent, we have more access, we have, you know, more access to power, control to systems and institutions. We have, our word means a lot more, you know, we have opportunities to go places. And then people also, because of denial, try to say Puerto Rico and in Mexico, for example, there's this idea that we are like the harmonious mix. El mestizaje. Mestizaje is seen as something elevated, you know, and it might be elevated if it wasn't for racism, because then some people are positioned at the top and some people are positioned at the bottom. What happened? It is people from our own family. In the same family with the same mother and father, you might have children that are very light and children that are very dark. But what happens with the ones that are more dark, you know? Well, in a race-based society, regardless if there is no absolute purity, you still feel the sting of racism on those that visibly show their Africanness. And that is a source of discontent, a source of suffering and torture that we also endure in the Americas. And also, you know, the fact that our oligarchs work very tight with your 1% in the United States, with the government of the United States. So genocidal policies and practices are applied to Latin America, interventions and occupations. The interests of wealthy people in Latin America have prompted so many of us to leave our own paradises, because this is a paradise where I live, and then go to the United States to experience racism. Of course, we don't know that. You know, we think that if we work 4 jobs that, you know, somehow we're going to make it. And if we keep our nose clean and our head down, you know, that things are going to go well. And at some point in realizing racism, it is that we understand our own racism in our own countries. But if we maintain the level of denial that in Latin America there is purity and that the United States is the bad one, you know, the ones that have created this, and that we don't have any level of intimacy with racism, we will not progress. So the problem is overwhelming. in Latin America. Right now here in Puerto Rico, in the year 2000, for the first time, we were asked what was our race. They imposed the census of the United States because we are colonial subjects. They imposed it to us. And the result was that 80% of the people say that they were white. We have more white in the year 2000 that whites were in the United States. How's that possible? It is ridiculous, but again, racism take even your optics away. Your ability to see yourself clearly, it takes it away too. And we have had many campaigns since the year 2000, and I'm glad to say that only 17% in the year 2020 said that they were white. That's good, but we're still denying our Africanness.
So how does that show up, Maria? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure that we don't leave this particular subject, right? Because in conversations that you and I have had, it is that the whole census process, right, in the United States is very much like sometimes incentivizing some groups to tick that box for white people for some reason, right? For this separation of power. Can you just speak a little bit about that, please? Because that's racialization in action, like, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And it is building upon, the disorientation that people have. Imagine, somebody from Latin America coming to the United States and for the first time being asked, who are they? And they think that the census is asking them about their skin or their humanity or their origin. But the census is just saying, in a race-based society, who are you? Do you belong to the dominant group or not? Well, a lot of people, in the census for 2000 in the United States, 48% of Latinos say they were white. In the 2010, it was a 53%. That has changed in a healthy way because of Trump policies and because of how acutely painful it has been in the last years for Latinx people. But what it was happening, Lane, for example, if you take North Carolina, Greensboro, which is one of the examples that I'm always bringing because I saw it, with my own eyes. The office of the sheriff is stopping Latinos in the same way that it's stopping Black people, but they stop them as white. When they put in the records, even if you're not white, they say that you're white. So what does that do? What that does is that it evens the statistics for Black people. You're saying that white people are stopped at the same rate that African Americans, because you're counting Latinos as white. So in that way, also, in a predatory way, using the numbers of Latinos. So that happens. You send the illusions that some Latinx people that are not of African descent and that, they're not visibly Black, that some of them can enter the white collective. It's a promise. I'm giving you a promise that you could be part of the American dream. For others, no, which is the other thing, that I was saying about West Side Story, the idea that we are brown. You have a brown analysis. You are brown people. We are Black people too. But the illusion is like we are brown people and we're not Black. And then we leave part of our family behind. And in doing so the census used those statistics in a very opportunistic way. That's why we need to, kind of do the kind of work that we are doing it, because we need to explain it to people with that level of detail. When you do this, This is the implication. You are lending the numbers to white people. White people, according to demographers, are going to be in the minority. They used to say that Latinos were going to be the majority amongst minorities for the year 2010. Well, we met that quota in 2000. Now they're saying that we, Black people and other people of color, we are going to be the majority for the year 2040. It used to be the 50s. What's going to happen when all the so-called minorities, I don't like the term, but the so-called minorities realize the level of power that we have when we are clear, when we are sharing our narratives, when we are sharing our pains, when we are sharing our history. So that's a lot of power. So it's in the best interest of the race construct to always maintain a group of people in denial about their Africanness, thinking that they are white.
Yeah, man. So much. I know a friend of mine who is from Honduras. So she's as dark as I am. And she was relaying a story that her mother refuses, I don't know if that has changed, but refuses to identify as Black.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Right. It's the same. It's the same here, and it's the same all over Latin America.
Yeah.
In Mexico, there was a politician that coined the word la raza cósmica, the cosmic race. And the idea was that we are so mixed that we are a race that is above all the rest of the discussion of race, that we don't need to talk about that because we are a mix and we are a harmonious mix. In Puerto Rico, around the same time, in the 50s, there was another man here that say, let's not talk about racism. More so, let's eliminate the label of race, so that you don't have to actually say if you are from one race or the other. Let's ignore that whole thing. Well, the problem is that when we ignore it, we cannot establish patterns of discrimination. We don't have the statistics. And that has happened to us for the last year. Even now with COVID, we don't have statistics about, who's benefiting more than who, like you do have in the United States.
Yeah. So Maria, I have a question for you, right? With all of this that's going on, how do we come together around this issue for the benefit of us all, and from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I know, and what has worked for us as groups that have a vested interest in eradicating racism, that it has been so important, again, that we share the narratives. One, racism takes away your mouth, takes away your ability to speak properly about racism. We are timid, shy. We sort of apologize, when we are going to be talking about racism, like, I don't want to offend anybody, but, why should your truth offend anybody? But we have internalized that we are not to speak clearly about racism, that we are not to speak clearly with white people about racism, with the idea that white people cannot endure the discussion about racism. So for us in our work, it has been about not only liberating ourselves, the totality of ourselves, liberating our mouth, so that we are eloquent in speaking about racism, so that we are clear in speaking about racism. That's one. And the other is what I have been discussing. Racism takes away your curiosity about it, the curiosity about each other. We need to have curiosity about each other. We are humans. Imagine humans in the planet walking, seeing each other, but pretending that they don't see each other and that they have no interest in each other. that is societal, but we do it constantly.
Yeah.
And so we need to regain that curiosity. We need to deal with the animosity that has been inflicted upon us. You know, there's a lot of animosity. We need to deal with it. You know, you cannot do this work if you still have not dealt with your issues with white people. Understanding that white people have been racialized, it's important. Understanding that there are certain things that white people don't see is important, as well as what they do see, you know. Understanding that in engaging people, you need to use a developmental approach, that we didn't grow up, we weren't born, learn, we learn in the process. So we have to be a little more, understanding of each other. We are so tough with our own people, talking about people of color. Sometimes we are so tough with each other.
Yeah.
We need to be, a little more loving with each other, so that we are able to organize, bring people together, see people and expect that people are going to give you the best of who they are, not the worst of who they are. Because believe me, there's so many worse things, that we could be giving, so many negative things. And sometimes we don't like each other. If the race construct is saying that I'm inferior, that my community is inferior, well, I don't like it. I don't like myself. I don't like you either. So this revolutionary love or decolonizing love needs to be one of our goals too. Or else, we are going to continue fighting amongst each other, losing our ability to organize together. We're not perfect, and our organizing is not going to look perfect all the time, but it is important that at least that we understand that, it's possible, that our ancestors put their faith on us.
Yeah.
And that we need to, show up. We need to show up for each other's struggles. We can't continue in silos.
And showing up for each other, showing up for ourselves, showing up, I mean, that takes courage, and, having these courageous conversations. One of the things that Lainey and I say towards the end of each show is to reach out, have a conversation with someone who doesn't look like you or think like you, having these conversations, and going back to a point that you made, about even within our own race, right? There's this insidious way of creating or teaching hate for ourselves. And that reminded me of when I was growing up, and, I grew up in Los Angeles, well, Pasadena. And when my cousins and uncles and aunts lived in Watts and South Central LA and Compton and all of that. And when I would be in the car with my father, I remember this so clearly, because it took me a long time to heal from this phrase. And his phrase was, "Niggas and flies I do despise. The more I see niggas, the more I like flies." And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So now I'm looking at me, because I've been called this. So how do I heal this? And then as years went by, my father and I, we talked about that, and we healed that. So the more that we come together, having these conversations and really being really, what's the word I want to use? Willing to see each other, and seeing ourselves,
Right.
To talk about how do we heal this? Let me see you, and let me be willing enough for you to see me. Yes. And not be afraid.
Yes. The other aspect is rhythm. In your own example, we can talk about it and talk about culture and how racism has taken away our rhythm, a live rhythm. It gives us a different rhythm, the rhythm of master, you know, if you could say that. And then we don't follow our own rhythm, and we need to regain that rhythm with each other. And again, you know, that's work, but
Yeah.
that's why we are here.
That's why we're here. I love that rhythm of master. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, look at the hands going up. Lane, you think it's time?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's open the floor. I don't know if you noticed the queue.
Oh yeah, I already have
okay.
folks. I have folks written down in the order that they've raised their hands. And before I get to that, just real fast, now we're going to get into the Q&A, the question and answer, area. And to raise your hand, you want to take your cursor down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen, click on reactions, and then you will find a button there that says raise hand. If you don't see it there, go to the participants tab, which is over on the left-hand side. Click on that, find your name, and on the three dots to the right, click on that, and you should find the ability to raise your hand there. All righty. Whew, man. So we have Tyrone, we have Alex, and then we have Adine, and we have Adine. Tyrone, Alex, and Adine.
Thank you, Eugene.
You're welcome, my brother.
Sister Maria, you are something else. I'm telling you. I like how you said, why apologize for telling your truth? And I really appreciate that. Telling the truth for Black people in this country has been dangerous. I mean, critically dangerous, But here's the point question I wanted to check in with you on. You know how crazy it's getting today. It's like the whole concept of one step forward is two steps backwards. Voter suppression. I think Jason and Joe made two really good points in the chat. Voter suppression is being used as another way of oppression, basically. Same thing with trying to create a boogeyman out of critical race theory.
Right.
Trying to turn a simple conversation about looking at racism as don't accuse me of that. Are sometimes confusing racism with prejudice, which are two entirely different, concepts. Right. So I just want to go back. What's your take on where we are today? Because I think we're at a really scary point in terms of what's going on. What's your take on that?
Yeah. It looks scary. It looks very scary. I do have a lot of hope because I understand that we are in a different developmental stage in the United States. Our ancestors fought hard so that we were here. Since the civil rights movement, you have seen a lot of gains that created a different soil for work. To the point, that we have the first Black president of the United States, which you might not agree with him, but at least you will agree that developmentally we needed a Black president in the United States. Well, we got it. And what was the reaction of people to that? It was insolent to our race construct. And the reaction has been predictable. The problem that I'm seeing is how often we put our faith in political parties. The problem is that we think that they're going to be doing all right by us. And here, it doesn't matter if it's, in my opinion, of course, I don't live in the United States, but in my opinion, you might have a real big problem when you put your faith even in the Democrats, either on Democrats or either on Republicans. And we don't put so much emphasis and faith on people and in movement. We are in a different developmental stage. Our movement at this moment is in a different soil, not the same than before. So there's a lot of potential for us. But if we continue, you know, with the idea that the government is going to solve it, or that good people, they are going to tell, I'm going to tell you, it's really distracting and disorienting, because for the first time in many, many years, I saw a party running with a campaign that says that institutional racism was bad. I never saw a party talking about institutional racism. And I saw it this time. But if I let myself to be distracted by that, then I don't understand racism. You know, we have done a lot in terms of people that are at the top, but the faith has to be in the base, on people. We need to organize. And we need to organize those people too, so that they have a little bit more spine. It wasn't enough to say it in the campaign. Now they have to act on it. And it can be symbolic. My problem with it is that it's very symbolic, you know. They're not changing systems and institutions in a way that they will create well-being for everybody. The system continues to promote well-being advantages for white people, even now. So I have faith, and also I have faith on the courage that some people are exhibiting. You know, there was a time that you spoke about racism and you spoke clearly about racism. And as you say, we'll pay. We're still paying, you know. But when we start speaking about it more and more and more and more, and you make it into a habit, you know, it's not the kind of conversation that you have with your one good white friend or you have in your home, you know, but it's a conversation that you have openly without apologizing. Well, it becomes a habit. United States doesn't have the habit of speaking clearly about racism. It's getting there. So that's my hope, that out of normalizing the conversation, that we can be more honest with each other, that I have to be less concerned about how delicate white people might be for the conversation. And that more and more white people are saying, don't protect me, I don't need protection. You don't need to protect me, you know. I have a thick skin. And that's the hope, that we all have the same thick skin, because in the past, you know, it has been us having the thick skin.
You better preach.
Thank you. Thank you, Tyrone. Thank you, Maria.
We just had church, man. We just had church. Thank you so much, Maria.
Oh, you're welcome.
We have Alex, Adine, and then Ann.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Lane. Thank you, Reverend Eugene. And thank you so much, Maria. I'm really, I'm very intrigued by what you're saying about decolonizing love. And also I'm hearing, it sounds like that's related to the developmental stages you're talking about. And also when you talked about rhythm, it sounds like rhythm has a something really important to do with decolonizing love.
Right.
So could you talk both about colonization of love and decolonizing love?
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you.
Great question.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's about culture, and it is about, you know, cultural racism is when one dominant group imposes its values and its beliefs and takes away the ability of, in this case, people of color to have self-determination. And we cannot have self-determination with hate amongst us, you know? But throughout those 500 years, we have been fed with the idea that we are not good enough to be loved, not even by God. God has been racialized. You know, we are not made in the image of the divinity. It doesn't show. It's like a guy from Scandinavia, you know. And if you're not made on the image of the divinity, then who are you? You're not a son of divinity. You're not a daughter of divinity. So you're left there, in this nebulous state where you're not lovable. And we don't love each other because race have been convincing us that loving each other is not okay, that is not advisable, that we rather love more white people than love ourselves. And so from that perspective, we speak about decolonizing love because our minds have been decolonized. We have been left rendered impotent in the midst of racism. We don't talk often about cultural racism, but I would say it's the most important topic within racism. If we don't talk about that, then we'll be replicating the same culture that benefit master, if you want to use that word. Audre Lorde, what did she say? The master house will not be.
The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
Correct. And so we cannot dismantle the master's house using his tools. And yet here we are consumed with the imposition of that dominant culture, our culture being portrayed as a folkloric culture, as an entertainment culture, but not the kind of culture that can reproduce freedom. You notice that there are multicultural institutions and they send the message that you're good enough. We want multiculturalism, but we don't want your culture. Your culture doesn't reproduce professionalism. For professionalism, use white culture. The same one that has been used for 500 years. Use the same thing, don't change it. So yeah, come, be with us, but not the totality of who you are. And that also involves the kind of love that we are bringing, the kind of humanity that we are bringing to systems and institutions. We cannot be devoid, of humanity in these systems and institutions, but we have a capitalistic, very individualistic culture that is producing and reproducing wealth and well-being for those at the top. As for the rest, it doesn't reproduce much for us. You see it in the statistics. If you see the statistics, you notice that by all criteria of well-being, people of color are doing worse. If we are doing worse, if we continue to be disoriented, if we continue to be in pain, what is our future? And our children understanding this, because that's another thing, what kind of faith are we passing to the children? Are we so hopeless that we are not elders anymore?
Good stuff. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
We have Adine, Anne, and then Sheila.
Wow. I'm almost in tears. You are magnificent. I have four short pieces that I just wanted to add into this. As a fair-skinned African-American, I just feel this constantly because I've been surrounded by this stupidity constantly. And I see the need for the internal healing of non-white people before we can bring our strength and battle the strength that whites are using to hold us down. And we're not healing ourselves internally enough. I visited Argentina a number of years ago, about 8 or 9 years ago, as a tourist. And I know the history of the countries that I visit. And I know that they imported millions of African slaves. And I know that at the end of slavery, they murdered, they destroyed those African slaves because they didn't want a multicultural country like Brazil. So they just simply eradicated them the way the colonialists here eradicated the Indians, even more effectively. So there are a handful of sort of mixed blacks in one tiny section of Argentina. I was speaking with a dark-skinned Brazilian friend at a professional meeting once. And in the middle of our conversation, she asked me, "What are you?" And I said, "I'm Black." And she said something that stunned me. She said, "You would never admit that in Brazil." And I wanted to cry again. I had a fair-skinned aunt who told me once when I was a child and I was misbehaving, "Act your age, not your color." Then I think of the stupidity of the Dominican Republic, where the darkest skinned Dominican is Indian. So while we're going after what we have allowed whites to do to us, we've got to clean up our act.
Yeah.
Yes, you are so correct. You know, it's what you have been describing is some of the most cruel manifestations, you know, just to mention Haiti and how they denationalize people of Dominican Republic that have ancestors that were from Haiti 4 generations back. So you have never been in the country, yet you were sent there. You know, you say you are not from here. Again, racism is about taking your place of belonging, right? So we take the place of belonging to people. We assign people, you know, a place of inferiority. We manage you. We tell you where you belong or where you don't belong. And sometimes you don't belong to any place, like in the case of the people that were denationalized. And the same with Argentina. The genocidal practices were brutal. And I don't know if you know, but these places, some of these places, well, do have still the children of Nazi people.
Yes. Oh, yes.
One of them was running recently in Argentina too, you know, no shame on that.
Yeah.
And so it's there. The ideology of superiority is pretty intense. And when you have people of color, like in Argentina is one thing, then Dominican Republic, most people are of African descent, like with Puerto Ricans. But then you don't call yourself African descent, you call yourself Indio. Because Indio has more humanity than Black. And you want to have grades of humanity, you know, and you want to save face about your own identity. So I'm not Black, I'm Indio. My own mother at some point here in Puerto Rico, my uncle was called Negrito. They call it Negrito. And I was talking by the phone with her and I say, but Negrito is negro. And she said, no, Negrito is Indian. And I was like,
Wow.
Oh my God. You know, he's Indian because look at his hair. He with the brillantina, I know that this has to be part of your culture too. You know, when you put the grease, you know, and the grease, you know, will straighten the hair of man. You know, he barely have hair, but whatever he have left, he straightened it in that way. And so they will presume that he was Indio. But it is a very, you know, mulatto family, to use a term that is also, you know, questionable. And so, yeah, you're right. It is, you call it stupidity. And yeah, racism make us stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Racism make us disoriented, stupid. It make us lose rhythm. You know, it make us uncertain about who we are. It compromise our mouth. and it compromises our rational thinking. And it makes us suicides. So that's why we have to fight it like crazy.
That's deep. Thank you, Adine, for your questions and comments. Maria, thank you.
You're welcome.
Whew. And we have Anne, Sheila, and then Michelle.
Wow, so my heart is hurting. And as a white woman, I am very willing to feel this pain. Thank you very much. It's what I need to do. So I read on Yahoo today that Governor Desantis has created a bill that prohibits public schools and businesses from making white people feel uncomfortable. I am outraged. But this is exactly what's happening in this country that really terrifies me. And we got to stand up against it because it's just so not okay. Come on. Don't dare make white people feel uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Anyway, I just had to say that because it's really scary. Yeah, and just I want to say, Maria, how much I'm appreciating you, who you are, what you're doing, and the depth of your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, Ron Chisholm used to say, the director of People's Institute, now is founder that is in semi-retirement, but he used to say to people, have you seen 100 white people, you know, organized, denouncing racism without no other person of color around? And people were in silence. And then he will say 50, and people will be in silent. And then he say 20, and people will be in silent. And with things like what you have been describing, and it will be so important to see if white people are organizing and if they're visible, or if people of color will have to take that down too. You know, we will have to fight it by ourselves. So it'll be important that we track what groups in the United States are stopping, putting a stop to this supremacist agenda that we have, what we are having and experiencing right now. Thanks for your tear, Anne.
Yeah, and
and
thank
your
you so much.
vulnerability.
Yeah,
Yes.
Truly. Sheila, Michelle, and then Frank.
Wow, I'm just so full now. I forgot what I was gonna say, but I first want to say to Maria, you are indeed a bad mama jama. And thank you so much. I mean, my mind is just, oh wow. So many things have come to my mind. The whole idea of colorism, which is such a deep wound. And I know it's not just in the African-American community, but as an African-American, I know firsthand the wound it has been in our community. And as a dark-skinned child, and you know, all my mother did with my hair and making sure that I looked perfect, because she knew the world was gonna have some idea of me because of my skin color. And that came to me one time in a graduate class. We were talking about race. And this instructor led us through a visualization of what, you know, if we were of color, what our parents did to sort of protect us. And I thought about her obsession with my you know, straightening my hair. Some of you will know that using a straightening comb, not once a week, every morning, you know. And I just ran out the room crying, you know, because it's an act of, you know, of love and protection. So I thought about that. And then I thought about this really dear friend of mine from Brazil, who had really enjoyed the privilege of a very fair skin in Brazil. And she would look at people that were my color and sort of feel pity because they had to go to the back of the bus, she said, even, you know, in the 2000s, that there was that kind of separation. And when she came to United States and she went to a professional conference, and she was a guest at a hotel in the hallway, another guest came up to her and said, I need extra towels. And that was her moment of, she was like, what the, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, that whole idea of privilege that she had enjoyed in Brazil. And so we, as you say, Sister Maria, not in the nonsense, but as you say, you know, those stories, we shared our stories with each other.
Right.
And she said that was her moment of truth, that she realized that, you know, she came here thinking she was going to get all the privileges of being a white person, but she soon found out that she was seen basically just as like another, you know, N-word. And then the third thing that came up for me was a professor I had in my undergraduate work. It was my first African-American studies class. God, this was like 50 years ago. And I remember he said, I am in awe of white supremacy. And I was like, the hell is he in awe of it? You know, I was thinking awe, but you know, Professor Johnson, 50 years later, I can tell you, I know exactly what you meant. I mean, and he told us the way it was constructed, what was injected into it, and the fact that we all collude, we all sort of, you know, and it's even hard for me to admit this, but, you know, we all sort of keep it going. What keeps it going is us accepting these racialized identities. What keeps it going is us believing the myth about other people and wanting to be separate and, you know, just on and on. So thank you so much, Maria. I mean, you got me. I'm going to have to journal after this. So I'll probably journal for another whole hour.
Great,
But
great.
thank you. Thank you so
You
much.
know, you make me think also about the fact that that examination that we need to have with ourselves when we are in trainings, we talk about the manifestations of internalized racial inferiority. We say to people, you might not have all of them, but you have some. You know, you have not been, you know, your socialization has happened in a race-based society. So you're not excluded from this. And it does require a lot of insight into oneself to know what is it, what we have internalized. But the other aspect of that is shame. And the other aspect of that is forgiveness. We have to work on forgiveness for ourselves. We have to desperately, you know, we have not been made imperfect. You know, by divinity, we were made imperfect by racism. Right. If we are imperfect. And so all of these that we are carrying, you know, the doubt, you know, the negativity, the frustration, the lack of optimism, you know, the inability to fulfill certain things, that's part of the race construct. And we have to forgive ourselves for that, all of us. For the ones that know it, for the ones that are to know it in the future, because we didn't know it, you know, we didn't know where we were at some point, all the, you know, road and all the strength that it has taken for us to be combating, you know, struggling with racism inside of us. And so their turn will come too, and we have to be ready to forgive also, to push and forgive. So thank you for that, Miss Shayla.
Thank you, my love.
We were created perfect. Racism makes us imperfect. Thank you so much. We have Michelle, Frank, and then Gail.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I can't turn my video on. Thank you again for creating this safe space and these conversations are necessary, where people can be vulnerable. You know, through this whole thing, and thank you, Maria and Eugene and Lane. I mean, you guys are phenomenal. For me, it's about passing, right? A lot of people pass for many reasons. And I don't know if it's intentional, not intentional. I know growing up, I had many different colors of Black people in my family. And yeah, I had people in my family who passed in order to get to New York, right? To like save themselves from where they were. And then we went through a phase of, when I was growing up, of being okay to have afros, and the color of our skin was a great thing. It was Black was beautiful, you know? And then we went through the phase of, like, we're just complete reactionary. We're not staying true to ourselves of who we really are, of, you know, perming our hair, jerry curls, and, you know, just that whole thing. And being told you speak white, whatever that means. And, you know, it's just the whole dynamic. And people wanting to aspire to that because in their mind, it was the best if you were closer to whiteness, however that, whatever that looked like, from your hair to your speech, to your clothing, to your submissiveness, to your obedience, you know, that's all part of it. And I am so grateful that we were having this conversation, because that still happens. Yes, it's inflicted upon us with census activity and with politics, but we self-impose these things on ourselves, right? To fit in, to feel happy, to feel whole, to feel a part of, because we don't know where we belong. Self-reflection is 100% necessary, I believe, to do this work. Because you do have to work from a place of love and compassion and forgiveness. And we can't give to others what we are not willing to give to ourselves. It just doesn't, we don't know what it looks like. We've not experienced it. We don't know what it does. We don't know how it works, because we haven't began with ourselves. And so, again, I'm just grateful for that. But passing is a big thing. I saw this movie. It's called Passing. It's on Netflix. Two good
yes.
friends. Yeah, it was really good. I don't know if anybody else saw that. It's called, I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Oh, no, I was going to say, if anybody gets a chance, that you check it out. It was two good friends who grew up together, who didn't see each other for a minute, saw each other again, started out both Black, one ended up passing, you know, and it was deep.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just want us all to really come from a place of love and forgiveness, because it's invaluable. So thank you again. And I really appreciate the conversation that's happening. And I'm grateful for everybody who's here.
Thank you, Michelle. You know, I was going to say, passing until you are discovered. That was the whole point of the movie too, you know, the fear of being discovered.
Yeah.
So to the extent that you could pass, but not all the time we can pass. And some of us think that we can pass because skin, but people are looking at us like, no, you know, it's like the Brazilian friend that was described before. You know, she might have thought that she could enter the United States in with equality, and pretty soon somebody say, nope, you know, we're going to put you in your place of inferiority.
That is true. And yeah, that was a really good movie. If people, and for people that don't know what the term is, passing is when you are not being true to yourself about who you really are. So if someone's fair skinned, they can, like this woman described, coming to the US and realizing she was no longer of privilege, in a sense of being looked at in her country as white. So again, it's a very powerful thing that we do to ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Also, there is a really powerful movie that was out in 2003 with Anthony Hopkins and Nicole Kidman called The Human Stain. Powerful drama, The Human Stain. You can probably find it on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but it's a Prime or something else. Yeah, 2003, The Human Stain. Anthony Hopkins, who plays this African American who passes. Yeah, good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Whew. We have Frank, Gail, and then Joe. Tina will be the last. I'm sorry, Joe put his hand down. We have Frank, Gail. Tina will be the last question. Frank?
Yes, thank you. Maria, I just want to say thank you. And before I go any further, I just want to apologize. I hope I don't offend anybody with these comments. Number one, I haven't a clue what whiteness is. I haven't a clue what blackness is. I haven't a clue what Latinx is. I just know people, and I love people. My brother Eugene is one of my most favorite people on the planet, and I just love him to death because I love him. And I have had this thought going on in the back of my mind for a long time that really we need to begin to educate each other about each other. We talk about everything is written from the white perspective. History is written from the white perspective. Capitalism is written from the white perspective, and how to act. Even though I'm not really sure capitalism is much of a great system at this point in my understanding, because it creates separation and it creates hate. I know that until I understand the cultures of my Black brothers, the cultures of my Filipino brothers and sisters, the cultures of my Asian brothers and sisters, and the way they think and the way they act, I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing, because I don't know enough. The only thing that I could say is about the politicians, I'm grateful. I'm really annoyed that everyone's fighting, saying we're not going to teach critical race theory. And really what critical race theory is, in my mind, is history. And until we're willing to teach history from all perspectives, be it white, Black, gay, Latinx, Hispanic, American Indian, or Native American, then we have failed completely. We have completely failed ourselves and each other. I have part of what I think it is we have not experienced each other.
Frank, let me ask you a question. Do you have a question for Maria? And all of your comments are great. They are fantastic. And do you have a question for her?
Yes, I do, Maria. Maria, do you think that the possibility of going into the whole conversation about teaching each other's cultures and learning from each other's cultures, do you think that's a possibility to help us to move forward? Sorry, Eugene.
Oh, you're good. You're good, bro. You're good.
I was on my rant. Sorry.
Tranquilo, no problem. Listen, I'm thinking whenever I hear about learning others people's culture, and to me it's important, but that's what we used to do in the 80s. You know, it was about cultural diversity. And you could be culturally diverse and you could learn about people of color culture and still be a racist system and institution. And so for many of us, the key is understanding white culture. You know, the key is understanding the culture that has been used to suppress other people, to silence other people. Some people say there's no such thing as white culture. We're a melting pot. You still find people today talking about the melting pot. And what we're saying is, People get so entertained with the idea, I need to learn your culture, that they're not necessarily learning about white culture, which is the culture of imposition. It is the silent veil that exists between us. It transpires all of our interactions, but we don't necessarily identify it. We don't ascribe the kind of power that it has and that it has had, throughout the years. Suppressing the culture of indigenous people and African people has been key, and in that suppression, there's a cultural aspect, which is the idea that my culture is more evolved and you should be happy to have it. And by the way, don't talk about it. Don't talk. It's invisible. Don't talk about it. So for me, yes, all cultures need to be explored, but with an emphasis on white culture.
Okay, one more question. Now I'm going to table that. It was more of a comment than a question.
Thanks,
thank you.
Thanks, my brother. Whew, Maria, thank you so very much. We have Gail, and then we'll end this Q&A with Tina.
Well, thank you, Eugene. You kind of intimidated me. I really want to speak, but I'm not sure I have a question. But I'm going to speak anyway.
I should hope so.
Maria, your passion has just got my heart pounding, and the passion that I'm hearing from everybody here. I really appreciate everything that you've all said. I am a Jew living in Northern California in Sonoma County, which is 1 hour north of San Francisco. My understanding is that there are about 25,000 Jews, including Jews of color, in my community. And recently our city commissioned a large sculpture, a very large sculpture, to be placed in our courthouse square as a symbol of our diversity and unity. And the Committee on Arts and Public Places chose 15 of the spoken languages they felt represent our diversity and unity. The city website of Santa Rosa has 19 languages, including Hebrew and Japanese. And the Arts and Public Places Committee voted to exclude those 2 languages. The Hebrew word they wanted to exclude was shalom, which of course is not spoken just by Jewish people. I wrote letters of protest to city officials and to the press and others, because when I saw that, I watched the webinar where that vote was taken, and I was so shocked and so angry and hurt and sad and feeling excluded. And I felt so much, for the other marginalized communities that are here, such as the Japanese. So I just wanted to speak on what you said about the fear of speaking out. Because when my rabbi found out that I had, was gathering support for this, he said he really appreciates my passion and everything, but maybe I want to tone it down because we have to get along with these people, don't want to burn any bridges, et cetera, et cetera. And I was so disappointed. And I really thought maybe I should listen to my rabbi, my spiritual advisor, but I simply could not. And So I just feel like, I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting, for all the generations to come. How do we tell our grandchildren when they stand in front of this sculpture and they ask, where are we represented? How do we explain what happened, how we were left out? And anyway, so I was interviewed by the press newspaper yesterday, and there will be a story written that will come out this week. And I certainly hope I wasn't misquoted or sounded like a fool, because I'd never been interviewed by the press before, and it's scary. But I just did, I just wanted to share that, that is happening here.
Thank you, Gail. Curiosity is what was the reasoning? That would be one. And number two, you don't have to answer now, but those are my question. What was their justification? But also when you mention these people, who are these people that that make the decision? I'll be curious to know what the reasoning behind that was, and if there can be any level of communication as to understand what's the reasoning.
Well, that's what we're looking for. Just briefly, it was
Gail,
for
I'm sorry. Gail, I'm gonna stop you. I'm sorry. We are very, very short on time. So
Yeah.
this is not a place to, but she's leading you to force some inquiry about that, right? Maria, and I'm assuming that it's okay if she doesn't answer that question now.
Of course, of course. This is your forum, and I understand that there's homework for all of us,
There is homework, but I also want to take this opportunity to just say, Gail, thank you for doing the work that you do, for being courageous, a courageous ally standing for all of us and the forward of humanity. And as you say, generations to come, right? Because if not for people like you, no one would know the wiser. You understand? Right. Things just go like they go. So I just want to acknowledge you and thank you so much for sharing.
Beautiful, that. Lane. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Lane. Tina, and then we'll close it out.
Thank you. Maria, I was really fascinated by the developmental issue about, addressing. In our church, I'm part of a Unitarian Universalist church, and there's been work on anti-racism. And I'd say it started with like one token person being the one who would talk about it and make the rest of the congregation feel good. And now we've evolved into a group within the church. And we had a fairly animated conversation yesterday about how to bring more people actively involved in this. And there's a group who say, we need a kick in the ass. That was kind of the expression someone had to really get people going on this. I'm a social worker. I was taught, start with the client is. My thinking is, how do you meet someone where they're at? Bring them steadily along the path. That's my orientation and how I work. So maybe there's room for both, but I guess in terms of a developmental perspective and effectively getting anti-racism going in a predominantly white organization, which in this case is this Unitarian Fellowship. Do you have any insights into helping be effective, moving things along?
Yeah, you making me think about political maturity, that, we do need to use a developmental approach so that we can evolve and have political maturity, because it's very difficult sometimes for just one person to sustain the conversation. There have to be many people that kick ass, that are willing to just say it. And even if you make a mistake, to say it and keep moving. And then hopefully you have enough of a relationship with people that you can engage in discourse and make mistakes, and people can forgive you for your mistakes, and then we all can move together. But it's very hard in churches. It's very hard, the whole thing, the conspiracy of niceness and politeness is intense. I should say. And getting out of that is, that's pathological, and so it doesn't allow us to move forward. That there are some people that are improper, or some people that say whatever, and we're criticizing them. And sometimes people say, oh, this person is like that. She, you know, she doesn't measure, she doesn't have filters. And I said, well, you know, that's maybe compensating for the conspiracy of niceness and politeness. We do need people, you know, that can speak in a certain way, and that risk in the process, risk being judged. Imagine how many of us have been judged for speaking about racism and speaking about even our anger, you know, even the way that we talk. If I speak with anger, people will say, why are you so angry? And then I say, why you not? You know, what happened with your anger? And it is like, there is a way to speak about this. Don't make people uncomfortable. You need to be polite and you need to be proper. And I say, well, you know, at some point we need to be improper and maybe even deviance in the process, or else we don't move, because we have been socialized in such a way that we don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. You know, we have been taught to be very well educated, good girls, good boys.
Right.
And what we're suggesting is, like, sometimes you need to be a bad girl, you know, and a bad boy in what it respects talking about racism.
Thank you so very much. You know, there's a difference for me. There's a difference between being nice and being kind. Being nice is not saying anything that's going to cause, you know, to rock the boat, right? I don't want to cause any waves, right? That's being nice, right? Being kind is saying, you know what? There's something going on here that we need to speak about. You know, that's being kind. Because if people don't tell me, if they don't pull my coat to something that I'm doing that I should change, you know, because they want to be nice, that doesn't help me.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew, what a deep, heartfelt, passionate, eye-opening, heart-opening, soul-stirring conversation that we've had once again here on Race Talk Revolution. And I'm going to turn this over to my beautiful dear friend, Lane, the Reverend Lane Cobb.
So Maria, thank you, my friend. Thank you for speaking on the level of our humanity and bringing our vulnerability to the forefront, right? Because we are so vulnerable and we do need to be courageous, and you are one courageous lady. I wanted to engage people because we're really talking about, we talked a lot about people getting in action, and specifically white people getting in action. So I want to again remind people that we have this thing called the Undoing Racism Workshop, and to have people Google that, go to the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, psab.org, to find information. But also, Maria, your Latinx Challenges Workshop was extraordinary. And if that is a possibility, would you put that information into the chat for people, or just say what it is that we should be Googling? What is it?
Well, I'll put my my email and see if I can send you the ad for next time.
Okay, lovely. So folks, you have in your chat, we're not going to announce Maria's email, but you will have that if you want to get in touch with her. It's extraordinary.
There it is.
Piece of work for anyone. You do not have to be of Latin origin or ancestry. And keeping in mind, as someone said in the chat, we are all of African descent. It does not matter the color of our skin or where our ancestors were born. So I said that, and it's the truth. So with that, please join us next week. We will be hosting racial equity educator and activist, Mr. Thaddeus Gamory, and Ms. Kathleen Jean, an award-winning director of the documentary film Wade in the Water, Drowning and Racism. And they will speak with us about the work they are doing to promote diversity in aquatics and heal the wounds of racist practices surrounding water access in this country. We also want you to know that we will be starting a book study group of Heather McGee's best-selling book, The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. That's going to be from February 3rd to March 10th, 6 weeks. Please do stay tuned to your email for that. I would love to say more, but we are 5 minutes out of integrity. And I just want to let everyone know how thrilled we are that we get to be in this conversation with you every single week here at Race Talk with Lane and Eugene. Maria, Reinat-Pumarejo. Thank you so much. We are so honored.
Thanks to you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Very
Thanks
much,
to you.
very much.
Thanks to you.
Whew, thank you, everybody. As we like to say, go out and have a conversation with people who don't look like you. Connect with people who may think differently from you. And with that, peace and blessings. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Ashe. Bye-bye. Enjoy
Ashe.
the rest of the week.
Ashe.
Thank you, Maria.
You're welcome.